This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you for your company. The mainstream media won't tell you this, but Donald Trump is on a winning streak. His DC crime crackdown is working. Violent crime is down 32%, and there have been no murders for 2 weeks. Surely that's something worth celebrating? Well, not if you're a Democrat. According to Insha Rahman from the left-wing think tank, the Vera Institute of Justice, migrant crime and carjackings, well, they aren't things that Americans actually care about.
Don't take the bait in talking about migrant crime or carjackings or the things that actually don't matter to that many Americans.
Wow, and she is not the only one. Democrats are losing their minds that Trump is making America safer, and we'll dive more into that later in the program. But back to Donald Trump's wins, just look at the events of the past week. A New York appeals court has thrown out the $500 million civil fraud penalty against Trump in the case brought by Letitia James. Another massive win for Trump, who has faced years of targeted lawfare against him. And Canada has announced it's dropping tariffs against the US.
I'm announcing today that the Canadian government will now match the United States by removing all of Canada's tariffs on US goods, specifically covered under CUSMA.
Also today at the White House, South Korea's president praised Donald Trump's global peacekeeping efforts and even suggested that the president should build a Trump Tower in North Korea.
I would like to ask for your role in establishing peace on the Korean Peninsula. So I look forward to your meeting with Chairman Kim Jong-un and construction of a Trump Tower in North Korea and playing golf.
So what about the Democrats? What on earth are they doing? They're still fighting back against anything the president does, even if it's working. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is vowing to stop Trump from deploying the National Guard to Chicago, although Chicago was essentially the homicide capital of the United States, a city with the highest number of homicides. J.B. Pritzker doesn't seem to really care about this because he's suffering from too much TDS. But unfortunately for him, he cannot escape being reminded of Donald Trump's success.
We're very pleased about the progress that we're making. I know that I live rent-free in the president's head, and I wish he would spend some time in Chicago so that he could see what a lovely city we have.
Governor, quick follow-up. What do you do if the National Guard is activated and comes here?
Whoever that camera operator was, he needs an award. That was incredible timing. But if only the Democrats had someone representing them with some common sense. Anyone. What about the guy they wanted to be vice president, Tim Walz? What has he had to say lately?
Think of how easy it would be to be a damn Republican. Oh, what should I wear today? This stupid freaking red hat. What should I say today? I don't know. Just make sure it's cruel. Who do we listen to? That guy. Oh, the felon in the White House? Yeah, listen to him and that will be fine. Now he's talking about burning flags. He's going to have flag burning or whatever. Because he knows there's a hell of a lot of flags with his picture on it that are going to get burned.
Congratulations, Tim Walz. Your unhinged rant against Trump supporters is just the perfect reminder of why millions of voters are fleeing the Democrat Party. Joining us now is Emily Jashinsky, host of After Party with Emily Jashinsky on MK Media. Emily, it is great to see you again. Let's start with Trump's federal crime crackdown in Washington, D.C. It seems to be triggering everyone who must be against making the city safer. Protesters have even taken to the streets demanding an end to the increased federal presence. Look at this.
We are the litmus test, and how we respond in this moment will determine how this federal takeover will play out in other cities. At the whip of a threat. Why has Bowser allowed DC to be a playground for white gentrifiers and developers at the expense of the native population?
So we say, DCAT, you say, fight back. DCAT, 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 fight back. DCAT. I said, let me hear y'all say, stick together. When we talk about freeing DC and defending DC and all these things, we have to talk about the solutions.
Yeah, just looking at some of those protesters there are people holding up the No King sign, some are shouting shame. Emily, of all the things you want to fight Donald Trump about, this one's bizarre to me, especially as this appears to be working. There hasn't been a murder in DC for 2 weeks.
Yeah, which sounds like a really low bar, but that's what we call good news here in Washington, D.C., with the fourth highest murder rate in the United States. Even though, as people say, it appeared the statistics were going down on crime, that the crime rate was going down over the course of the last year. The D.C. Police Union disputes that, but they do believe, just over the course of the last several days, that we are down. Actually, we're down on crime. I've lived here for over a decade. It does feel like there has been an improvement in the city, and those protests are largely not made up of people from some of the worst neighborhoods, the hardest hit neighborhoods in the city. Now, of course, every neighborhood in DC has been touched by crime. It was really, really high in the 90s and the early 2000s, but it has remained high for the federal city, for the capital of the United States of America. People have gotten used to it, but it is especially bad in some of the neighborhoods where you aren't seeing these massive protests. In fact, what you've heard from some of the people in those neighborhoods is that they'd actually like to see more. They would like to see more organization. They would like to see more federal help, and they'd probably like to see it for the long term too, not just on the temporary basis that Donald Trump's federal takeover is operating on right now. So yeah, the polling shows that some people here in DC disagree. Most people here in DC disagree with what Donald Trump is doing, but that's different than whether they think that something badly needs to be done. And every single person in the city, for the most part, will tell you something desperately needs to be done, even though some of them are too proud and anti-Trump to admit that.
Well, there you go. Now, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, says the results of the investigation into DC crime stats are going to shock the public when it's released, including that murders have been recorded as accidents. This is what he had to say today.
Additionally, and the president spoke about this before, we've uncovered, in the process of uncovering, a massive scandal in Washington, D.C. with the doctoring of crime stats. And the Department of Justice, under the Attorney General, is leading the effort to uncover this. But when we ultimately share the results, it will stun you. The extent to which, even though D.C. had the worst crime in America, honestly measured, it dramatically understated how bad it was. There's even accusations that murders and homicides were reported as accidents instead of murders. I mean, this is how severe the manipulation of the crime data has been in this city, and it will all be uncovered and it will all be brought to light.
Emily, I mean, you're in DC. How shocking is that to you that we're hearing that murders have been reported as accidents?
It's actually not surprising to me at all, because the city doesn't feel like it felt in the middle of the pandemic when things were really, really bad. But honestly, having lived here for over a decade, the numbers did not seem to reflect reality. And these investigations actually predated Donald Trump's federal takeover of DC. So the DC Police Union, again, which is the union that represents people in the Metropolitan PD here in Washington, have said that this was going on for quite some time now. There's actually already steps taken in these investigations to suspend people who are suspected of manipulating the crime data. I doubt that DC is the only city experiencing this, but I hope that through this investigation, which has now taken on a much heightened sense of gravity because of the federal takeover, other cities are shown very clearly that this is going to come to light, that you cannot get away with hiding this information in the long term, because when you hide the information, it means that some of these progressive policing experiments that have played out in American cities over the last 10 years that have ended in disaster, so much so that even people like London Breed in San Francisco, where people were championing these policies, even here in DC, Mayor Muriel Bowser were championing some of these left-wing crime policies, even they have had to admit that that was a bad idea because the experiment ran. But the more you can hide the information and obscure the information, the more you can get away with continuing to acquiesce to the activist class on the left.
Well, Chicago and New York City are set to be the next targets, I suppose, of Donald Trump's crime crackdown. There are reports that military officials are planning the deployment of a few thousand National Guard members to Chicago. Now, Chicago, of course, recorded more than 500 homicides last year, the most in the country. Yet Democrats like J.B. Pritzker and the governor of Illinois is fighting against this. Of course, they don't like anything that Donald Trump does. And I suspect, Emily, that we're going to see more protests, just like we've seen in D.C.
It's going to be, I think, actually even more extreme outside of DC, because DC has something called home rule, which allows the president, and this is all for good reason, by the way. This is the capital city. It's where the core seat of the federal government is. Well, all of these federal workers here, we have all of these people who work for our intelligence community, for our military, for, whether it's the Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency, like some of the top leaders in the country work here. So it makes sense that you have the ability to step in and say the city is in an emergency condition of instability and safety is lacking. Now, on the other hand, we do have posse comitatus here in the United States, and a tradition that we don't allow the military to do civilian law enforcement. And so if the Trump administration can find a way around that, which is in legal limbo right now in Los Angeles, for example, if they can protect federal buildings, if they can protect federal officers, those sorts of things, they can come up with a legal rationale for it, possibly. And if that's the case, then they will absolutely do it. Donald Trump will absolutely do it. And the left is going to lose their mind on another level, because I think particularly the home rule doesn't exist in other cities.
Yeah, we'll stand by for that. Now, let's talk about Kilmer Abrego Garcia. He has been arrested by ICE officials. And just to recap, the DOJ says that he is a member of the El Salvadorian gang MS-13. He entered the United States illegally. He's also been accused of his wife, accused by his wife, I should say, of beating her in the past. Now, the left have kind of painted him as this hard-working Maryland father. Now, he was set to be deported again, this time to Uganda, but a federal judge has blocked this. Just quickly before I get your take on this, Emily, the Democrats, they just love singing when they attend a protest, and they've been out wearing pink this time, singing as loud as they could, demanding the release of Kilmer Abrego Garcia. Look at this.
Kilmer is our neighbor. You can't have him, Trump. No! Kilmer is our neighbor. You can't have him, Trump.
Yeah, I'm actually lost for words. I don't even know what to make of that kind of protest. But Emily, this case has been drawn out. It's been a bit of a flashpoint for the Trump administration. What's your take on the developments so far, and what's likely to happen here?
I mean, that video would be offensive if it weren't so hilarious.
Yeah.
That is just a great flavor of some of these protests. But there are, I think, some legitimate process concerns about Kilmer Abrego Garcia first ending up in El Salvador's CICOT detention center. That said, there's a difference between saying maybe the Trump administration made a mistake, which the administration actually admitted at one point in the legal process. Maybe the Trump administration made a mistake. That's one thing. But to then lionize Kilmer Abrego Garcia, who has been accused by his wife, as you mentioned, of spousal abuse and also of human trafficking, and who entered the country illegally and then cooked up a very flimsy asylum case. I mean, actually, Kilmer Abrego Garcia is the poster boy for the type of person who the Trump administration is looking to deport, and even a type of person that most Americans would tell you, yes, probably should be deported. He is the poster boy. And the fact that there are so many people, I think, on the far left that are not just saying, okay, Kilmer Abrego Garcia, some legal mistakes were made. They're saying this man is a martyr. Even some mainstream Democratic senators like Chris Van Hollen of Maryland are lionizing and martyrizing Kilmer Abrego Garcia. And that is so completely out of touch with where most of the country is. And it's immoral, too.
Yeah, it's completely insane. Look, I want to talk to you about Gavin Newsom's cringe social media strategy. I think it's backfiring. I mean, he clearly wants to be the next president of the United States, but his social media strategy is just bizarre. He's trying to mimic Donald Trump. He's also selling merchandise with caps that say Newsom was right about everything, which is a bit of a joke. T-shirts that say Trump is not hot. You know, I think he should really be coming up with a better... like a better way to communicate than that. But you've even got Democrats, such as former DNC chair Donna Brazile, slamming Gavin Newsom for this strategy. Of course, his podcast is still up and running, and in his latest episode, he interviewed Democrat spokeswoman Jasmine Crockett. Listen to what she had to say.
And to be clear, you can wave all the flags you want to, but I am telling you right now that the most unpatriotic people that we have in this country are MAGA and this president. We are the real patriots, and it is time for us to take our flag back.
Emily, after the election last year, Gavin Newsom said that he wanted to learn where the Democrats, where they went wrong. And he spoke about essentially wanting to potentially win people back over. But this social media strategy of his and the podcast that he has, I don't think that's the way to do it. It also comes at a time while Democrats are facing a massive voter registration crisis.
Yeah, a huge voter registration crisis. They are now in quite a hole, as the New York Times documented last week. I totally had the same instinct as you, and I put that question to a Republican strategist I know last week, what is he doing? And the person made a really good point and said, basically, he's cleaning up in fundraising and name recognition. So for the early shadow Democratic presidential primary that's going on right now, which, by the way, is not Gavin Newsom's full-time job. He is, of course, the governor of one of the largest economies in the entire world. But he's also podcasting and, overseeing this weird social media campaign. That is something that may actually help him start getting donors and email lists and name recognition with Democratic primary voters. Now, of course, that's not what most people in California would say they want their governor to be doing right now. And it's not a winning strategy in a general election, that's for sure. If Gavin Newsom were running like this in 2028, if he secured the Democratic primary against someone like J.D. Vance, it would not be working for Gavin Newsom. But now if he's looking to just get his name out there, I guess no press is bad press for Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, I think he needs to go back to running California. I think California needs a lot of help, especially after those fires at the start of the year. The unemployment numbers are crazy. You've got the homelessness crisis. There are so many issues in California that I think Gavin Newsom should get back to work as opposed to hosting this podcast. But hey, let's keep following what he does. Finally, Hollywood star Chris Pratt has blasted these far-left lunatics who hate Donald Trump so much that they cannot celebrate any of his achievements. Listen to this.
I'd hate to be so mired in hatred for the president that any success from his administration is something I'd have an allergic reaction to. To be like, oh, well, if they do it, I don't want it to happen. I'll put Clorox in my children's cereal myself. It's like, come on, be reasonable here. There's certain things that would be a good thing to have. I want them all to be successful.
He makes a good point, because that's what we're seeing at the moment. The Democrats are fighting anything Donald Trump does, even if it's good for the country.
Yeah, Chris Pratt would know. He married into the Kennedy family and probably gets his dose of that at family meals and Thanksgiving and holidays and such, where, even Robert F. Kennedy Jr., someone who has family, New York Magazine has a profile out right now on why the Kennedys have been so averse to celebrating legitimate wins by someone who is actually a member of their own family. And it's not just them, of course. That's illustrative of a broader problem on the left. And it didn't just come with Donald Trump. This is a problem that Americans had been dealing with as polarization increased in the last 10 to 20 years before Trump even. And hey, Trump just poured gasoline on the fire. We all got to see very clearly that the left was no longer able to celebrate the wins of the right if they happen. And even if, by the way, Donald Trump is not a typical Republican, even if they're the types of things that Democrats talked about for a very long time, even if they're actual ideological strains from the left, the left won't celebrate it anymore. So it's a strange time in America, that's for sure.
Emily Jashinsky, host of After Party with Emily Jashinsky on MK Media. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's time for Media Meltdowns, and MSNBC is set to rebrand to MS Now in hopes of boosting its disastrous ratings. So, in memory of one of the most far-left divisive networks in America, we are bringing you an MSNBC extravaganza of unhinged lefty lunacy, starting with Joe Scarborough, who made this declaration less than 18 months ago.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth.
Okay.
And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
The truth, of course, plenty of that on MSNBC. And it's sad that they got rid of Joy Reid. You know, her analysis was always insightful. Here she is reporting that inflation isn't something that impacts every single American. It's actually just a word that Republicans have sort of made up.
The people I ever hear use the word inflation are journalists and economists, right? So that is not part of the normal lexicon of the way people talk. So it's interesting that Republicans are doing something they don't normally do, right? Which is not use the common tongue, right? Not use just common English to sort of do on their campaigns like they're doing with crime. But what they've done is they've taught people the word inflation, right?
Okay.
Most people who would have never used that word ever in their lives are using it now because they've been taught it.
Republicans have taught the American people the word inflation. Well, here is Joy Reid with some breaking news, discovering that summer is hot.
We begin tonight with the lucrative politics of climate collapse and the greed that is literally letting our country burn. Today, millions of Americans from Iowa to Maine are suffering through heat warnings, watches, or advisories. Cities across half of the country, like Chicago, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Detroit, Philly, and now New York, are hitting temperatures exceeding 90 degrees Fahrenheit, though it feels closer to 100. Many of these cities could experience heat indexes hitting 105 degrees by Sunday. These increasingly oppressive hot days aren't a coincidence. They aren't. They are the predictable impact of the climate crisis. And they're not just an inconvenience, they're also killing us at higher rates.
Okay, it's too much. But who could forget MSNBC's coverage of the 2024 presidential election, which was more like rolling coverage of comparing Donald Trump to Hitler.
But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally.
Yeah, charming stuff, MSNBC, despite all the backlash, the disastrous ratings, and of course the election result that saw Donald Trump win in a landslide. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow, who's on around $25 million a year to bring you quality journalism, will not back away from her big scoop that democracy is over in America.
We have a consolidating dictatorship in our country. And it sounds melodramatic to say it.
Yes, it does.
But just go with that for a minute.
Joining us now is Jeff Cruer, broadcaster and commentator. Jeff, I'm so sorry I had to put you through that by bringing back some of MSNBC's best or worst moments, who knows. But looking back at MSNBC's coverage, what do you make of it? Do you think the rebrand is going to help this network?
No. the network, I mean, you did what we really should do with MSNBC, and that's just lampoon them. I mean, it's just so ridiculous that these people consider themselves journalists. I mean, Joe Scarborough has no credibility. Joy Reid, she was so bad she got let go by the network. And, you know, Rachel Maddow has been, raising alarms for years now. And so, this rebrand, I don't think it's going to help their ratings. They're doing very, very poorly. And I think it's so bad that NBC doesn't want anything to do with them now. So they telling the network to get rid of the NBC in the title, call themselves MS Now. For me, it's MS Never. I mean, it's just a joke of a network.
Yeah.
But hey, it's good. It's good comedy. It's good comedy.
Yeah, well, you're not alone. MS Never. I kind of like that one. Well, Donald Trump has blasted the rebrand and he did not hold back.
Then you turn to CNN, which is fake news and nobody watches it, or MSDNC, they changed, MSNBC. They changed their name now because they were so bad. But they're the worst, owned by Comcast, run by a guy named Brian Roberts, who doesn't have a clue. He's terrible, terrible manager. But they're not, I don't think, selling it. They're changing the name because they're ashamed of it, and they're disassociating it from NBC, which is also fake news. You know, they should be ashamed of that too.
He's right, Jeff. They're changing the name because they're ashamed of it.
You know, he knows television. I mean, for all of his years on The Apprentice, I mean, NBC should be so good to Donald Trump because he made them so much money when he hosted The Apprentice on that network for so long. But they're one of the worst networks in covering him. I mean, all the mainstream news networks are just terrible. So he really is always sounding off about the fake news because the media here is just so biased. I mean, they're all afflicted with Trump derangement syndrome. It's really amazing. They're having a difficult time because he's having a very successful second term. So they're very unhappy.
Isn't it crazy? They're unhappy and Trump is making America great again. But I want to talk to you about John Bolton. The FBI agents raided the home and office of Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, on Friday morning, following allegations that he sent highly sensitive classified documents to his family from a private email server while working in the White House. I want to get your thoughts on this, but can we just take a look at the media's coverage and just compare it to the coverage during the raid of Donald Trump's home? This is Andrew McCabe on CNN discussing the raid on Trump's home. Just take a look.
This is something that would have been planned out and reevaluated and legally examined from every possible angle by the entirety of the leadership structure of both organizations. So let's remember that to get a search warrant in any case, whether it's you or I or the former president, you have to go before a federal judge and convince that judge that there is probable cause to believe both that a federal crime has been committed and that evidence of that crime is contained within the space you have described in your warrant request.
And then what does he have to say when it's a raid against John Bolton?
I have absolutely no doubt that Mr. Bolton will have very good counsel, and they will attack this in a full-throated and complete way, as they should, right?
Jeff, very different. That's unusual.
For one, I can't believe any network has hired Andrew McCabe. I mean, he should possibly be indicted himself for the role that he played in the whole Russia collusion nonsense. Secondly, now these Democrats that were cheering when Donald Trump's house was raided are having, as you could see, a much different attitude now that things have been turned around. And John Bolton, we talked about Trump derangement syndrome, is one of the worst. I mean, he was a guy that was given a great position by President Trump in his first administration, turned against him, and has just been vicious. So when President Trump was asked about it, I mean, he mentioned his own house was raided. So, I mean, he certainly knows how it is to be on the receiving end of a raid. And I don't think that they went into John Bolton's wife's closet or his son's bedroom. I think that was what Donald Trump had to endure.
You're right. Now, I want to talk to you about Cracker Barrel's rebrand. You know, Cracker Barrel is an iconic American brand, arguably one of the most loved brands in America. And Cracker Barrel reportedly enlisted 3 marketing agencies to come up with their new logo and remodel. And the agents collaborated for months to come up with making the brand more generic. And this is their pop-up event in all places of New York City. Okay, so that is pathetic, but it's been accused of going woke. Now its share price has plummeted 17% over the past month. Cracker Barrel has apologised, saying if the last few days have shown us anything, it's how deeply people care about Cracker Barrel. We're truly grateful for your heartfelt voices. What has not changed and what will never change are the values this company was built on when Cracker Barrel first opened in 1969. Hard work, family, and food made with care. Look, the statement goes on. But Jeff, this is not being received well. Customers are calling out this statement for saying, you know, we hear you, but we're not going to change the logo back. And we're also not going to stop funding Pride events. What's your reaction to all this?
It's just another tragedy. This is another iconic American brand that they've destroyed. So they got rid of the old gentleman. They got rid of the barrel. They got rid of the Southern charm. They got rid of all the Americana, and they created this ridiculous logo that, you know, a kid could have done. But I think they paid millions and millions of dollars for someone to get rid of all of it and come up with something generic. The interior of the restaurant has changed. So now you feel like you're in a hospital cafeteria. I mean, it's just very antiseptic. You don't have that kind of warmth that you had in the Cracker Barrel. We used to love going to Cracker Barrel. It's a great place to go when you're traveling. You feel like you're at home. You feel comfortable there. Comfort food. I mean, it's just a place where you can have fun, buy something in the store. It's like an old Southern sort of a feeling. It's something that was extremely popular. And these woke idiots have, destroyed this goodwill that had been built up over all these years. The same sort of marketing geniuses came up with the Bud Light campaign with Dylan Mulvaney to use a transgender activist to market a beer to conservative customers. I mean, it's just incredible. So I'm upset because I really did always like Cracker Barrel, but now I'm going to have to, reserve, my judgment for a while to see if they can rectify this. But it's a mess. They've really created a mess.
They have created a mess, and it appears that that apology is not going down well. I think these marketing experts need to remember where they are at the moment. It's 2025. Donald Trump is president. I think woke is dead, or, the saying, go woke, go broke. But let's talk about what is happening in the UK. I cannot believe this story. Asylum hotel operators have been told they have to house convicted foreign criminals. The Telegraph is reporting this, and also staff at the hotels must be trained on unconscious bias. This comes amid increasing pressure on the government to close hotels across the country. We've seen protests. I mean, what is going on in the UK?
The UK is lost. I mean, I'm very worried about the UK. I was watching a video the other day of a gentleman who had a flag in his yard, a proud flag, because he's English. He wanted to display his flag, and someone was giving him a hard time for having his country's flag in his yard, saying that it was offensive to people. So I think they've had a succession now of very, very far left prime ministers. They've moved away. I remember the days of Margaret Thatcher when you had the Iron Lady there, and you had a country that was, I think, in a much different direction. The only thing that can save the UK is Nigel Farage. And if he can possibly win and turn the country around. It's been overrun with people that have come there illegally. These socialist policies are not working. And I think the country's in real trouble.
Many people would agree with you that the only person who can really save the UK is Nigel Farage. You can see why he's well ahead in the polls. He's also announcing plans to enable the arrest, detention and deportation of hundreds of thousands of people who come to the UK in small boats. I suppose people look at America, they see what Donald Trump has been able to do in such a short period of time, where he's carrying out these ICE deportations, the border is closed. And so I think there's kind of this desire or this hope that in the UK, someone like Nigel Farage can do the same thing.
Well, Trump has really provided the roadmap, I think, for other countries to follow, because we were going in that same direction under Biden and Obama, and things got out of control here. And Trump has really turned things around. He's only been president for 7 months, and he's made tremendous progress. So that can be maybe an encouraging sign to people in the UK and other countries that they can maybe turn things around, but they've got to change the leadership. They can't keep electing people like they have been. So I wish Nigel Farage well. He's got a lot of support here in our country. Many people admire him here in America and support what he's trying to do and are rooting for him. But we know it's an uphill climb, even though he's ahead in the polls, because it's not going to be easy to overturn that in the UK.
Jeff Crouer, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Always brilliant to speak with you.
Thanks for having me.
Joining us now for all the royal news is Louise Roberts, News Corp columnist. Louise, great to see you again.
Great to see you too, Gabriella.
Everyone is talking about Princess Catherine and her new hair transformation. She's been photographed with much more kind of golden, lighter locks, looking stunning as always.
As always. Yeah, it's very subtle. It's interesting, depending on which photograph you look at, it looks very blonde in some pictures and more kind of that honeyed glow. So she's certainly been blonding up, I find, in recent months. And I feel that's part of her shift from survivor to sort of style setter in a way. It sort of shows her renewal in her confidence and her authority as well. So, and she's a very beautiful woman, but having that extra blonde tinge to her hair, I think, is sort of quite youthful in a way for her. So it was great to see. And I think that beautiful photo of them all in the Range Rover, she's very serene. And the optics for them as a royal family are just fabulous. There's William driving, she's in the front seat looking stunning as always, and the 3 children in the back. So they have played another masterclass, I think, in royal branding, particularly with Balmoral as the backdrop, because that's the only other time of the year apart from Christmas where the entire royal family are together. So if you're going to debut a enhanced, more sophisticated look, that's the time to do it.
I think you're right, and also it shows a bit of her transformation. We all know her, what she had to go through with her illness last year, and then this year she's really stepped back into the public-facing roles that she's been attending. And also in that photograph that you mentioned, a lot of people are spotting Prince George and how he looks so much like his uncle Earl Spencer, who is of course Diana's brother. And you of course noticed this as well.
I noticed it too. I thought the likeness to Charles Spencer was uncanny, really. That same sort of serious look and that same Spencer profile. He's very much like his father William, of course, as well. But it just shows you these Spencer genes are very strong in that bloodline. You still get, you know, a hint of Diana every time you see William, of course. Less to Harry, I think. William has a look of Diana, and I'm seeing it now with the Spencer genes with the eldest boy there. You know, he's very tall and very composed, and you know, really much a sort of young statesman in training, isn't he? But when I saw him sitting in the back of the car, I thought, wow, that's Charles Spencer. Amazing.
Let's talk about Prince Harry's controversial US visa application. It's come under scrutiny again after the Trump administration turned up more than 1,000 documents on his file. So, of course, we know his immigration status in the US has been under question, I suppose, since he admitted in his memoir Spare to using cocaine and marijuana. What's the latest here?
The latest is the Heritage Foundation have this between their teeth and they are not letting go. They've been fighting this for years. They've been determined to get the actual visa application that Harry filled out, or his lawyers, made public. Now, some documents have been released, but they've always been heavily redacted, so we didn't really find anything out. And they're determined to use him as a cause celeb, you know, to sort of illustrate that celebrities are treated in a different way when they are filling out visa applications for the US as opposed to ordinary people going there for a holiday, for example. So the question remains, did Harry reveal his drug use on the visa application, or did officials turn a blind eye? That's what they're determined to find out.
It'll be interesting. You know, I've heard President Trump speak about this before. Yes. He said, I think Harry's got enough problems with his wife, Meghan.
Yes, he did. He did.
We'll see.
We'll see what actually comes out of it. I mean, I don't think he's leaving the US anytime soon. And that's why I've always found interesting the work that Charles puts into the relationship with President Trump as well. I think there's a bit of a safety net there, perhaps. So we'll see.
Bit of a thank you.
Yes.
And there are reports that the titles of the Duke of York and Duke of Sussex may not be passed on to future royals due to the negative associations with, of course, Prince Andrew and Prince Harry. What do you make of this? Do you expect that this is going to be the case?
I thought this was a really interesting development with these two. So Richard Fitzwilliams is a very sort of well-known royal commentator in the UK. And what he's done is he's used the example of the Duke of Windsor, saying when Edward VIII abdicated the throne to marry Wallis Simpson in 1936, there hasn't been a Duke of Windsor since. So his theory is that perhaps the Duke of York, Andrew, and the Duke of Sussex, Harry, titles will be retired when they pass on, I guess, which I think for both of those men would be, for them to even consider that would be catastrophic, because I think they are of the expectation that their grandchildren or great-grandchildren will inherit, when, you know, a boy is born, he will inherit the title and that will keep the bloodline and that legacy going. But the problem is, of course, that just like with Edward VIII, their personal choices have tarnished their title. And I think if we look about reputation management and strategy, which will be very much part of William's reign in particular, I feel, he will be examining very closely if there are any titles that are potentially toxic. And if there's a young royal star coming through the family, why would they give that title to them? I mean, there's plenty of other names they can wheel out if they actually wanted to bestow a title.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting. Now, there are also reports that the late Prince Philip was reportedly relieved when Harry and Meghan's wedding was over. According to the former royal butler, Grant Harold, he turned to the Queen and said, "Thank F, that is over." What more can you tell us about this?
Well, I thought it was very interesting, one, that he would swear like that to the Queen, but I think they had a pretty robust and, you know, down-to-earth relationship away from the cameras, but also that Philip's first instinct was, as you say, of relief, not joy, as they left the church at Windsor. And it kind of indicates that senior royals perhaps had a different view of Meghan than what we were led to believe at the time, because the global narrative was that everyone loved Meghan. They thought she was a breath of fresh air. Thank goodness Harry's found someone to love and cherish and look after him. I mean, it's even as I say that to you, it sort of beggars belief, considering how the royals view her now, and that's at the hands of Harry and Meghan, of course, in that way. So I think the fact that Philip made these remarks doesn't surprise me. He was a very straightforward man. He could say things that perhaps the Queen couldn't say. There's no doubt he called a spade a shovel, I guess is the way he was often described. And I think that he made those comments in 2006 and perhaps had an indication that this wedding was more about Hollywood and grifting and less about carrying on tradition, which as a military man he would have wanted to see that tradition carried on, no doubt.
Well, speaking of Hollywood and the reference there, in the world of entertainment, there's been a bit of a development in the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni case. It just keeps going on. But new details have emerged of Justin Baldoni's hiring of a social media guru who was apparently paid $90,000 for his services, according to newly unsealed documents. Now, the court papers also reveal that Baldoni's crisis management team cost an estimated $9 million. I mean, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. And when you consider this case really has only been live since December last year, when Blake filed the sexual harassment case against Justin Baldoni, and he countersued, alleging defamation, amongst other things. But it just shows that at Hollywood, when you've got a personal feud, it gets very expensive and very toxic and dangerous as well. I mean, I would argue this feud has overtaken the movie completely.
Absolutely.
It's all about them fighting each other, and the fact that this, 90 grand for 3 months, this fixer, and Blake's side are saying that there were chatbots and fake accounts all to skew the narrative against her, which of course his side has denied. But I mean, a terrific waste of money and a very expensive way to make a point. But I think the day they actually put down their arms and say, let's just settle this quietly, but they seem to be both fuelled in this and really invested in this battle. I think I can't see it ending anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think it's playing out well for either one of them.
It's definitely not playing out well for them. I mean, their brand for both of them, I think, is tarnished. I mean, in a way, a director will look at this and think, do I want this drama if I hire either of them on my next project?
No, absolutely not. Louise Roberts, thank you so much for joining us. That is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.